Good evening, everyone. Today we'll be learning about nutrition in animals, class 7, chapter 2. This is lesson number 2. Okay. So, when you talk about nutrition, there are basically 5 steps in the process of nutrition. Okay. So, first one is ingestion, followed by digestion, then absorption, then assimilation, and lastly egestion. Right? Okay, now ingestion means obviously to take in the food, right? And then masticate it with your teeth, add salivary juices, and just break the food down into a paste. So that's the job of ingestion, the first step. Second is digestion. Digestion means further breaking down the food. Now, this is important to remember that digestion begins in your mouth. Right away, you start eating your food, and when the salivary juice is added by the salivary glands present in your mouth, right? Now, there is an enzyme present inside, that's the amylase, that helps to break down all the starches into sugars, right? So, like for example, if you start chewing a piece of chapati or bread or rice repeatedly in your mouth, it would start to taste sweet because of formation of sugar. So, starch gets digested in your mouth into sugar, right? This is the second step, that is digestion, and then we'll further continue with the story. The third step is absorption. After the food is digested, it has to be absorbed into the bloodstream, so that is absorption. The fourth one is assimilation. That means utilizing the digested foods to produce energy for growth, for repair of the body, etc. And lastly, whatever is not needed has to be ejected out of the body, so that process is called egestion. So let's look at this diagram now. This is the diagram of human digestive system, and you see we start eating food through our mouth. You put the food into the oral cavity and then you start masticating. Salivary glands add the juices, food is broken down. Next, the food passes through this long tube, that is the esophagus. Another name of this food is the food pipe of this tube. Now, there is muscular contraction in the walls of the esophagus, and this muscular contraction is called peristalsis, that pushes the food down into the next chamber, that is the stomach. So, from the mouth, the food passes into the esophagus, next into the stomach. Now, stomach is a J-shaped organ, and it helps to further break down the paste-like food into thick soup, right? There are 3 things that are added in stomach. So once the food comes into the stomach, inside the stomach, 3 things are added. One is hydrochloric acid, another is mucus, and gastric juices, which are having many enzymes in it. All right. Now, the role of hydrochloric acid is that it is going to make the medium of the stomach acidic, so that it can further stop bacterial growth or any germs that you might have ingested with food, right? The job of mucus is to act like a shield and to protect the stomach lining against the corrosive action of the acid. And lastly, the gastric juices, which further help in digestion. Now, it is important to note that stomach is a gland, and the job of gland is that it secretes digestive juices, right, that aid in digestion. Now, remember these 3 things: hydrochloric acid, mucus, and gastric juices are produced inside the stomach. Now, the soup is in thick soup-like consistency. right? Okay, next the food passes into the next chamber, that is the small intestine. Now the small intestine is highly coiled structure, and you see it the process of digestion comes to an end when the food reaches small intestine. Again, three things are added here. Now if you can see, there is this gland here called as pancreas. It is a leaf shaped gland. Then we have another gland, that is the liver. It's the largest gland in the human body, right? So they are going to release the secretion into the small intestine once the food enters it, right? So what happens in small intestine? Once the food reaches small intestine, again three things will be added. First is the secretion of liver, that is bile, that helps in emulsification of fats. That means making the bigger droplets of fats into smaller droplets. Next thing is the secretion of the pancreas. Now pancreas is the largest pancreas is a leaf shaped gland. It secretes pancreatic juice, right, which helps to further digest the carbohydrates that you have ingested along with the food. And the walls of the small intestine also secrete their secretion or the digestive juices. Now they are also glandular, you can say, which further have many enzymes in it, and they help to further break down the food. The process of digestion is going to come to an end when the food reaches small intestine. So remember, the process of digestion begins in the mouth and ends in the small intestine. Now what are the products of digestion? The fats will be digested completely into fatty acids and glycerol, where inside your small intestine. The proteins will be digested into amino acids. So actually first they break down into peptide chains and later on into amino acids, right? And whatever leftover carbohydrates that had escaped the digestion in mouth, they will be completely digested into glucose. So all these things are digested completely, and process of digestion comes to an end in the small intestine. Now if you get back here, so we have done ingestion, digestion. Now next is absorption. Now if you look at this, these are the walls of the small intestine. Now that means if you see, if this is the small intestine, then the inner walls of the small intestine have finger-like projections which are called as villi, right? They are there to increase the surface area of the walls of the small intestine so that maximum absorption can take place. And if you just zoom into this part, this is what you see. Inside the villus, you have numerous blood capillaries. There's a network of blood capillaries inside, and you see as the food is passing through it, the food gets inside the capillaries and it's absorbed into the bloodstream. So here is where the absorption takes place. Where does the absorption take place? In the villi of the small intestine, right? Now absorption has to take place, the food has to be digested, and only then it can be absorbed into the bloodstream. So here is where it takes place. Next, we come to assimilation. The fourth step, this one. Assimilation means, in simple words, it means utilization of digested food inside our body. Utilization of food, right? Now, respiration is a part of assimilation because the glucose is going to be burnt to produce energy. So respiration is a part of assimilation. Formation of new protein molecules, storage of fats inside our various parts of our body, all this is part of assimilation, right? So respiration is going to give you instant energy, so this comes under assimilation. It means utilization of the digested food inside the body. And lastly, we come to egestion. Now when you from the small intestine, the food passes on into the large intestine, right, which is shown here in green color. Now it has two parts, large intestine. This part is the colon, this part is the colon, and rectum, right. Now colon, if it is going up, this is called ascending colon, this one is transverse colon, and this is descending colon. So as the waste passes through the walls of the large intestine, the water is reabsorbed. There is only one thing that is happening here, and that is reabsorption of water from the waste, so that the waste is now left as a solid waste. So as it passes through the walls of the large intestine, it finally is stored temporarily in the rectum and finally ejected out through